Hello, students. I'm back, and we're going to do some stuff tonight. I'm not going to give you an assignment for the most part. We're going to give you this little screencast video and a couple of videos to watch. One of them on planaria, the hunter-killer, which is a very important animal in terms of evolution, and then another video on tapeworms. And I guarantee you, and this might gross you guys out, and I don't care because it's probably the truth. At some one of you, whether it's first hour forensic science or second hour biology, fourth hour biology, one of you in your lifetime will have a parasitic tapeworm in your intestines. One of you might even have one right now and you won't even know it. Okay. They are, we're not a third world country, so I can't say they're very common. But anytime you're eating any type of food that is not cooked properly, maybe exotic, that food right there that your body's not used to can carry these, these proglottids of tapeworm. And then once they're in your body, they're kind of a pain in the butt to get rid of. So, but I guarantee you, one of you guys probably has one of these tapeworms now, or you will have in your body at some point. All right, so I want to go back and review here a little bit. So we started with, the invertebrates, the introduction to the animal kingdom. At some point, some creature crawled out of the oceans and started making, we started the animal kingdom. Okay, so the sponges, looking at some of the notable characteristics, we know that all animals are multicellular. Let me, if I can put a little pen here. All animals are multicellular. Okay, that's a basic characteristic of all animals. We start to see the beginnings of specialized cells called choanocytes and amoebocytes, but they're not specialized enough to form tissues. They're asymmetrical. They don't have any particular shape in their lifespan. Incomplete digestion. Very, very simple animals. There is a little bit of organization between the choanocytes and the amoebocytes for filter feeding, but that's about it. Okay. There's no cephalization. There's no head to a sponge. There's no centralized nervous system. It's just it's multicellular, mobile, eukaryotic, and heterotrophic. It's the very basic minimum that makes it an animal. The cnidarians, a step up, now we start to see the beginnings of symmetry. Okay, this is a radial symmetry, which is a perfect circle type of symmetry. So we've got that. We've got true tissues. We start to see the beginnings of the mesoderm, the endoderm, and the ectoderm. We start to see some organization there with cells. We're still incomplete digestion, but we see more specialization. We see the beginnings of some nervous system, what we call the nerve net, where the edges of these animals are communicating with the brain center, kind of the centralization center of the animal. So you're seeing some sensory organs start to pop up here. So very, very similar with the sponges, a little bit more complicated here with the cnidarians. When we get to the worms, the Platyhelmenthes, the roundworms, the flatworms, and then the mollusks, the squids, the snails, the octopus. Worms, in terms of evolution, are extremely, extremely important. When you think of worms, all you think of probably is fishing bait. Okay, what can I put on my hook? Go catch some bass or whatever. Okay, creepy, crawly figures that live in the soil and things like that. But from an evolutionary standpoint, from a biology standpoint, these are the first animals that start to show cephalization. Okay, the idea where we're going to have a head structure. An earthworm has a head end and has a butt end. Okay, bilateral symmetry. We can cut an earthworm in half and have a complete right side and left side. It's no different than if we were to cut ourselves right in half from head to toe. We'd have a right side, we'd have a left side. This is the first time we see that. It's the first time we see cephalization. It's the rise of the mesoderm. Now we have 3 levels of derm layers in an organism. We see the beginnings of a complete digestive system. We see the beginnings of a brain and a spinal cord. We see the beginning of a circulatory system. An earthworm has 5 hearts to it. First time we see that. First time we see what we call, what will end up being the beginning of the hepatic system with kidneys. Okay, earthworms, flatworms, very, very important in terms of evolutionary relationship. So let's go ahead and turn our focus onto those worms. So there's 3 basic types of worms that we'll talk about. Okay, the flatworms, called phylum Platyhelmenthes, and I apologize for this kind of fading in and out on you. Phylum Platyhelmenthes. The roundworms, which are going to be the nematodes, and then the segmented worms. These are the worms that you'll probably deal with when you think of an earthworm. It's a segmented worm, but that is those are the annelids. Okay. Flatworm belongs to phylum Platyhelmenthes. Okay. Platyhelmenthes literally means flatworm. Very common flat ribbon-like organisms. Very common in fresh water. So if you go skiing or tubing out at Lake Taylorville, lots and lots of Platyhelmenthes worms in the water. And there are some that float around in marine waters as well. Can be free living, which means they can feed, they hunt, they're parasitic, they can do whatever they want, or they can be non-parasitic. But most of them are going to be, kind of in the tapeworms and parasitic groups here. Okay, so those are some of your flatworm characteristics. Probably the most basic and best example of a flatworm is the planaria, and you've probably seen a picture of this at some point growing up. Planaria is that black worm that's very flat. That has two little eye spots right there. Okay, again, and then right there at the beginning, we see the beginning of a brain. Okay, it's no different than our body plan. This would be the head area. This is going to be the tail area. So this is cephalization, the idea that we have a true head area and a true tail. Okay, and then we have centralization, which is the beginning of the brain, and then we have what's called a nodal cord that comes down here that starts the beginning of the spinal cord. Okay, so free-living flatworms, and they're no more than 2 or 3 millimeters in thickness. They've got a little bit of width to them, but they are flat worms, hence the term flatworm. Flukes are parasites that live in other animals, including humans. This is when we talk about complete digestive systems. If we go back to this slide here, the rise of the complete digestive system, okay, we start to see that in the fluke. All right, so that's kind of a big deal here when we talk about evolutionary trends. This is the one that really freaks people out, is the tapeworm. Okay, parasitic flatworms like flukes that without a digestive system. Pigs, cows, dogs as hosts. Humans can be hosts as well. If you're not cooking your food properly, especially meat and chicken, you're going to run the risk of eating food that's contaminated with flatworms. A lot of third world countries, a lot of their population has flatworms living inside of them. Other than maybe some diarrhea, some loose stool, they're not that big of a deal, other than the fact that you've got a worm living inside of you. Okay. Humans can also be infected with tapeworms if they eat uncooked fish, beef, or pork. All right. And when you watch the video on the tapeworm, it's a very unique structure. The head area has what we call the scolex. It's got a bunch of teeth on it, and those teeth are backward facing. So what happens is that first segment of that flatworm, it burrows into your intestine, and those teeth burrow in, and then they turn backwards, and they anchor this tapeworm to your intestine. And the rest of the tapeworm is free to float about wherever it wants to go. It's like a tail that hangs off of a dog on the back end. Very, very unique structure. If you take medicines for this, a lot of times the head area will stay attached to your intestine, and then the rest of this will get pooped out at some point. That's what the medicine does. It kills the tapeworm. But the problem is these guys are excellent at regeneration. So that head region that doesn't get killed will simply grow another series of tapeworm segments called proglottids until it reaches its normal size. All right. So usually it takes 2 or 3 rounds of medicine to kill that head portion to get all that tapeworm out. Okay. Pets often have these. A lot of times, if you have, especially a puppy, they'll eat anything. They'll eat their own poop. Okay. If it's got tapeworm proglottids on it, they'll grow tapeworms, and they'll have to get them medicated for that. All right. So those are the flatworms, the planaria, the flukes, and the tapeworms. Okay. And we'll talk more about them tomorrow. The roundworms, phylum Nematoda. All right. These guys are pretty gnarly. Very long, cylindrical, slender bodies. When you think of a worm, you think of a tube-like structure. Think of a roundworm. Okay, that's where they get their name from. A lot of these guys are parasitic. If you've ever watched the movie on might be Discovery Channel, called Monsters Inside Me. A lot of these stories that are about parasites and worms, they're always talking about, for the most part, the nematodes. These guys can live in your eye. They can live in cysts in your body. They can live in your heart. A common killer of animals is called heartworm. The heartworm that your dog has or your cat dies from is a type of nematode. It's a type of roundworm. Okay. The free living ones are great at decomposing, but when you think of the roundworms, think of parasites. Okay. Almost a lot of exotic countries, third world countries, they don't do a great job of sanitizing their food. Again, meat, pork, chicken, very, very important areas of getting these parasitic roundworms, and they're very difficult to find. They're very difficult to take care of. Here's a good example of what a heartworm looks like. Most of the time, you're going to see this in dogs and cats, but there's the heart of a dog. Okay, and these are the heartworms that are living in the heart. Literally, they're attached to the heart. They clog up the arteries. They clog up the valves. And eventually, the dog will die of heart attack, essentially, because of these heartworms. Okay, these are all parasitic nematodes, and there's too many to really talk about. Okay, humans can also be have parasitic roundworms, trichina. Okay, if you eat pork that's not cooked properly, these little worms can live in that pork. You eat it, it will eventually burrow itself into your muscles and form little cysts in your muscles. So, and not just one of them, you'll have thousands of these little cyst-like structures. And, you got to take medicine to kill all these, to burst the cyst, and then your body will kill the worms. You've got worms like this that can get into your eyeball and live inside the vitreous fluid of your eye. It's very disgusting. Hookworms, again, these guys will attach themselves to your intestines and feed off of your intestines. You see an infected foot right there from a type of nematode. And again, walking a beach in a third world country, that's where a lot of these things are going to live. They live in those sandy areas, and they'll get into your feet, and they'll go from there. Segmented worms, this is your earthworms, okay? Especially in the springtime when it rains real heavy, you'll see the worms come out of the ground, trying to make their way across the concrete and get killed and ran over and all that kind of stuff. When you think of worms, you're thinking of phylum Annelids, okay? The segmented worms. Your earthworm is a segmented worm, okay? Repeated body parts. And this is the first time we start to see body segmentation. Whether you know it or not, our body has certain segments to it as well. We are segmented with limbs and the way that our cardiovascular system's put together and our chest is put together. Okay, we have body segments. The segmented worms, is the very start of segmentation. Okay, found crawling in moist soil or swimming in the sea or fresh waters. This last slide here is very important. Okay, we've talked about, we keep talking about complexity. Look at the segmented worm here. Nervous system, first time we've seen that. Circulatory system, first time we've seen that. Digestive system, first time we've seen that. Excretory systems, first time we've seen that. Okay, we start to see the beginning of hearts. We start to see the beginnings of kidneys. Okay, we start to see the beginning of the spinal cord. We start to see the beginning of the brain. In terms of evolution, the simple earthworm that you put on your hook to catch fish is one of the most important creatures that we study in terms of evolution. Okay. So, there's an earthworm in there. I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of pictures of earthworms because we all know what they look like. Another earthworm is a leech. Okay. This is a blood-sucking parasitic annelid. When you've ever seen a leech up close, it has little body segments to it. These things are very unique because, what you think of a leech as a parasitic bloodsucker and they get a bad rap. A lot of times in the medical industry, somebody who loses a limb, a finger, a thumb, an arm, okay, to get blood flowing is they'll attach leeches to the end of that limb. So let's say you get into an accident and you cut your pinky off, okay? When the surgeons go in and they reattach your pinky, they've got to get blood flow to the pinky to save it. Okay, so what they'll do is they'll put the leeches on the end of your pinky and just let them do their thing. Let them suck the blood from your arm to that pinky, and that kickstarts the blood flow through your pinky. It's a very unique structure. Okay, and this happens. You can go to lots of hospitals today, right now, and you might find leeches that are helping amputees get blood flow back to their lost limbs. Okay, and that's going to be it right there. So when you think of worms here, you got three types. You got your flatworms, the phylum Platyhelmenthes. You've got your roundworms, which are mainly parasitic, the phylum Nematode. Okay, and then you've got the segmented worms, phylum Annelida. All right, and we've already been introduced to some of this, so we'll come back tomorrow and look at roundworms. We'll look at more characteristics here of all three. Probably have a worksheet to go along with it. All right, stay safe. I hope you guys enjoying your time off. I do miss all you guys. Even the squirrely ones, the ones that give me all the grief in class. I do miss you guys. You guys keep me on my toes, and I know I'll see you at some point, sometime, maybe this year, maybe next year. But stay safe. If I don't see you to the summertime, if you pass me in a car, make sure you wave and smile. And I look forward to seeing you guys again.